And here we are with lot of fortune on degree 7, midheaven degree 6 of Virgo, lot of fortune in Pisces, ascendant. We just skipped over the opposition. Just a couple of words about the cold case I reviewed. So it's from Pelle Other Freeze Foundation from 1993, and the ascendant is applying to oppose Uranus at the time when I was watching that, which further tells of a possibility of suicide or sudden death. And I talked about the intricacy of determining that factor, but this video is actually another story, okay? And I said briefly that Neptune has been in Aquarius between 1996-7 to 2012, and now we have Pluto there. So not only Saturn in Aquarius is something that we are not repeating but revisiting from a different perspective, but also Neptune. And I think I told this story briefly a couple of times, but now I want to tell it again. This is going to be a Do It By Feet episode. I haven't done a Do It By Feet episode in a while. So when I was around 12, 13, 14, and in high school, there were this misdar thing. Now, let me know in the comments if that was in your school. And this was Israeli schools in Hedera, which is, and later in Ramat Gan. So in Kfar Saba, it was first to third grade. Other weird issues, but they were not necessarily like to do with anything. I didn't do anything like GATE program or Prodigy Children program. My mother just wouldn't allow me to take the tests. As a child, I didn't understand why, but as an adult, whatever were her reasons, then she must have had something right. She must have done something right. Because that means that I wasn't taken to one of those governmental programs that you can read about with satanic ritual abuse survivors. And those were very weird things. Like you had to stand for a whole hour on your feet as a child. It's given North Korea, and they called it misdar. And all the students, like all the pupils, everybody in the school, they had to stand for an hour, and I don't even remember why. And they would do that sometimes every week even. There were schools where you were wearing the same uniforms, but I don't remember what was this misdar. And in retrospective, the only reason I pay attention to that is like when I fix the space between my toes, then, and by the way, if we don't, in Israel at least, we don't have coverage for treating the feet. No coverage at all. So there is good medical insurance in Israel if the medicine was good, but what we have is not so much medicine, unfortunately, unless you take it private, and even then it's not always the medicine. And so we don't pay for as much as, let's say, U.S. citizens, but and I think U.S. citizens get the same problems. Okay. Oh, 7 people watching. Oh, nice. And so going back to these weird rituals, I don't even remember what they did in this misdar thing. Like people would stand, and I don't understand why. And it was like a rectangle. Okay, so everybody had to stand for at least an hour, sometimes 2 hours. In retrospective, it's given North Korea. And I don't know if it has to do with like the Masons or anything like that, but for me, I could not stand, like very simply put, physically, I could not stand this. And it wasn't because I was angry at them. I didn't know what it is. I just couldn't stand for 2 hours on my feet. And nobody believed me because I was athletic. Okay, I was the type of person where if we had in Kfar Saba, we had one student that was going to Wingate, and she was very short, so I was trying to do all the tricks that she was doing. Like, I was very athletic. Or if it was, running at about fourth grade, it became difficult for me. So nobody believed me that I cannot stand on my feet, right? And it wasn't by, like, I have to be honest here. It wasn't like I identified that they were doing some sort of ritual and then walked out. I just didn't know what they were doing, and I physically couldn't stand. I was also this hyperactive type of person, so you wouldn't get me. Like, I loved studying, and you see me here. Like, this is what I do. It's like I use my brain when I'm not when I'm not walking around. Then I'm using my brain. So you see that I just didn't fit with that North Korean type of Masonic misdar or whatever, and nobody believed me. That made me feel so excluded, and it planted a seed of nobody will believe me. And it also planted the seed that there was something about me that didn't fit the societal frame. And it would make it very difficult for me later in life also to work, because if work required standing on your feet, then I was exempt from work, and again, nobody believed me. And I wanted a job. Like, I wanted a job. I wanted to make money, okay, to be self-made person. But I didn't find myself, and nobody believed me. Everybody thought that I was just making it up. And in retrospective, I understand that, just like nobody believed me, and then the person who believed me tortured me, which was the psychologist Itamar Yaron, then if I think to my childhood, like, nobody believed that I'm not just making this up. And the people who knew I'm not just making this up, they were very likely either beginning to target me or wonder what my blood type is, because this is what they do in these weird cults, or presenting me as, the problematic kid where I just couldn't stand for 2 hours over nothing. Okay, but it wasn't even like the brain, it was just like physically I couldn't stand. And it was very challenging. Now we have notions of, there are people who are disabled that, for example, can be on a wheelchair one day and then can walk one day. I had a friend that had CP, and the because it's neurological, so the wave brain function, it's chaotic. And so our nervous system is chaotic. So sometimes you would be able to do something, sometimes you would not be able to do something, but nobody gave a flying fuck about that. And people just thought that if one day you can do something, the next day you can't, then you're probably making this up. Nobody gave place for a little bit of chaos, because that chaos was threatening the order, and nobody talked about the medicine of the feet, because the feet chakra is connected with the crown. And these Masonic orders, they know that. They want to detach you from the feet. So you will be defeated, very simply put. And so going back to that, so if you wonder where was it in Israel, because I lived with a single parent and we moved around a lot. So in Kfar Saba, I don't remember that. There were other problems. But later we moved to Hedera, which was Bet Eliezer, and that was Tzlil school, and then there was the junior high, and then we moved to Ramat Gan, which was already like the junior high, and then Ol Shem school. So in Ol Shem, all the way to high school, they wanted us to have this weird misdar thing, both in Hedera, and I think in Hedera they canceled it after a while. Like, people couldn't stand it, very simply put, and they canceled it. It's like, why would we put children in this situation? And they wanted to prepare people to like a North Korean order. If I go back to one of the recent Yom HaAtzmaut, which is the independence celebrations in Israel, then there was another infiltration where the entire ceremony looked like China. Now, there's nothing wrong about China, but the particular problem was that it looked like those misdars. Okay, everything was like this set in orders. And I'm not saying communist, because communist would be a mistake. It is more Masonic. And those things, it's both like physically, I couldn't stand those, even though I was athletic and so on. And because at the workplace, they would expect you to be like those Masonic orders. This is also why my parent was very guarded that I wouldn't go to army, because she was afraid that I will kill myself. Because if I would have a gun at high school, I wanted to kill myself, because I wasn't trying. But the thing is, like, you feel so alienated. But I know that in North Korea it's way worse, like very simply put. But the thing is that if you were growing into these places and you felt like, you want to really unalive yourself because it's so depressive and you have nobody who understands you, nobody believes you, everybody excludes you just because you exist as a sovereign, living, divine being in a human form. And even though, I wasn't like, there are people who had a problem with studies. I love to study. I was the person that would take the books and would read and would be curious. And I didn't want to leave school. It's not like I hated school. And I also liked, to run, to do athletics, to later grow, trees and so on. So I just liked life, okay, for whatever it has to offer. And this is why I was becoming suicidal, because there was no place for people who liked life in even my country, Israel. And I became this excluded person, so I just detached from it. But it was very, very difficult. I think it was also difficult because I couldn't be categorized as a rebel, because I wasn't setting out to rebel in anything, okay? I just wanted to enjoy life. So I wasn't doing like things on purpose, which nobody believed, by the way. I was always the problematic kid because I wasn't doing things on purpose. It was just like, hey, if you explain a reason to me, then I can reason with you. But if you just try to make me obey things for no reason and I don't understand why yes, why no, then I don't. My mother understood it very quickly. She understood, and she said, for children, never punishments. Always explain to her something. If she reasons with you, she does. If she doesn't, she doesn't. Don't try to make her do something she's not. It's like she's not a bad person, she's not a violent person, she's not a problematic person, but you have to treat her like a sovereign person, like an equal. And society did not let you. Now the thing is that later they would blame people they'll say you are a sovereign, grown, mature, responsible human being, when nobody actually let you be a grown, sovereign, mature, responsible human being, because nobody let you make choices. You had to stand for 2 hours like some North Korean regime, and then it doesn't matter that your feet hurt, nobody could complain. And I was just sitting, and people were like, you're a good girl. Why are you doing that? Well, there's nothing. I cannot stand. My feet hurt. Nobody believed me. And this is such a tremendous soul pain, because only now I am 40 and I understand that that was a Masonic ritual or order ritual to get people to be not even like sheep, because if you would put sheep to that order, they would rebel. But the people didn't. They were all standing there, and their families, in Hedera, at least they talked about canceling that, because they tried to do it in Hedera and in Tzafririm school, which was like, I had a lot of problems with the school, but they basically, I think after a while they canceled that. Like, the families were not ready to put their children in such things. But where were the families in Ramat Gan? all in Masonic orders, of course, which I didn't know about, because that was like the good school, right? You go to the school where you can have opportunities, where you can go to university, where you come from good school, um, and you have science class and all those things, and filmmaking, like the combinations and so on. And also, when you talk about the gifted children, they only let the gifted children do like both the arts and the mathematics. They try to create divergence. You're not supposed to not be trained in both. I'm not talking about Spartan school, but you know, you're not supposed to have at least, you don't have to do, you know, the best, but you need to be exposed to all of them. You don't have to do the best. You don't have to be greatest artist. You don't have to be greatest mathematician, but you need to be exposed to that, and you need to have a chance at developing that, and then you can choose what to focus on more. Um, but I do believe in exposing people to the various faculties of knowledge, and there it was not allowed. In high school, I had to either go to the sciences or go to filmmaking, or arts or something like that, and it was not allowed to combine. But you cannot do filmmaking without doing science, and we cannot do science without doing a little bit of art, because and then but you understand that in the universities you are competing with people who are homeschooled to do both, and they get the chances and they get the scholarships and they get everything, and unfortunately they are also ritually sacrificed, raped and tortured and 13 espionages, but but that's the thing. The only way for you to be a thriving, happy, living human being was to be in those weird cults or in the gifted program, which would basically torture your entire psyche. And so I spent my time with a bunch of people that were very intelligent people. Okay, they did better than me in math, they did better than me in some other topics. Like I wasn't, I had good grades, but it wasn't like there were no smart people around. Not only in terms of grades, okay. And I spent my days feeling so completely isolated, but I cannot say feeling because I just focused on what I like. Like, I came here as a happy, thriving human being to explore life. I was the child who was milking my mother for like, how much is 2 plus 2? How much is 3 double 3? And she would only teach me like 3 double 3 and 3 plus 3. And then like the rest you will learn in school. I don't want you to get bored in school. Which is complete opposite than what other parents do or did. And I was that, curious child about everything. I like to be outdoors. I like to be indoors. I like to play with the soil and grow trees. I like to be with the caretaker of animals. I like to live in general. And because I liked to live in general, I was in society where it constricted the soul so much that already I began to think about killing myself. So this is Israel of, I'm 40 years old. We're talking about, the generation, the time where Neptune was, let's say, in Capricorn, till the time it ingressed to Aquarius. Actually, when it ingressed to Aquarius, I think we were traveling in 1997. We were traveling with our 2 dogs, which was very funny to Europeans because we bought a card and we had a weird plate and everybody was laughing and like, but the thing is that it was very sudden, and then when we came back, like the entire school, like, where were you for 6 months, and like, they were not worried about me. They were like, you're not going with the frame. And then I already took filmmaking. And then the very first grant, they give grant to people. I mean, the very first 1,000 shekels, because I was writing something. And I was so excited about that. And I would do filmmaking. I did a lot of filmmaking, a lot of screenwriting. I learned screenwriting before that, but then I actually like began to practice. And my first job was a TA for like the students that were doing the films, and I was with them on the set, and it was all in all a good time. It wasn't necessarily the easiest of time, but kind of like the Ingress to Aquarius always has something that you like, you understand that you're standing outside of the frame was not malefic. And so you see Pluto has ingressed into Aquarius, and I'm tending to this do it by feet, and I'm like, hey, those Mistar thingies, that was a freaking order of like North Korea, and then it has no rationale, okay? It doesn't grow happy, thriving people. And now when we're talking about like a global government and stuff like that, then this is also the age where Pluto in Aquarius is like, hey, the power is back in our hands. We're not going to be with those Misdar thingies, with those cult thingies, with those Masonic weird shit that, you know, and anyway, if you think about the Masons or the Enlightenment, you think about the philosophers, you think about the scientists, okay? You think about the people that wanted to thrive and live, and they were torturing these people kind of like MK Ultra. So it's like, hey, we deserve to be a happy, thriving human being. And you think about, we are the architects of society. We are the ones that build things, whether it's, you know, in the ground. We are the ones that grow things. We are the ones that write the texts. Okay, we are the ones that do that. We're the ones that do that, and it's not about like the rest of the people shouldn't be doing that. On the other hand, like the people are exposed to that, and now they do that. It's the joy of, you know, building your own house. It's the joy of filming a movie. It's the joy of exploring things. Okay, it's the joy of self-care, but also, you know, learning about the world. And it's those things cannot be in control, because that creates it anyway. The control corrects itself. So for me, what happened is like I could not so well run after fourth grade, yes, but I could walk, I could dance, I could this, I could that. As long as you don't put me in a frame, and I couldn't stand. Very simply put, I couldn't stand these orders. Well, intellectually, I thought that the Enlightenment are like the Masons aren't those Enlightenment people. I probably need to be in the Masons or something. Like, fortunately, I never went there because they were secret, and I was like, no, secrecy is not good. And boy, was I right. Okay, that orders were a form of, like we have microaggression. Okay, then that was a mini form of ritual abuse, because you take children, you put them to stand for an hour, 2 hours sometimes, in one place. This is ritual abuse. Okay, you don't have to go to the satanic cult, like, and it's the same cults, okay, to the ranks where they take their own children and bury them with living children buried with dead children, and all these like weird stuff, and rape infants. Like, you don't have to go all the way there. Just think about the group of like school students standing for an hour or 2 hours on their feet, which is unhealthy in every which way, and then you're expected to do the same for 8 hours at your workplace. So I couldn't find a job. Or you have to lie to people, which I couldn't. My throat was soring and I couldn't. And then they begin to bombard you with pills. Maybe you are allergic. I'm not allergic. Look how much time I speak right now when I speak the truth. My throat doesn't sore when I speak when I'm supposed to speak, in terms of my inner truth, and shut up when I feel that I need my own space with my inner truth. But if I don't do that, then my throat sores and I can't speak. And I go to the bathroom every 2 seconds, to the bathroom, 10 times to the bathroom. And they say, oh, it's probably something wrong with this system, that system. There's something is wrong with the system. Because what happens, this is what happens to the people. And this is what later leads children, youth, to try to take their own lives, which will land them in more abuse if they're not successful at dying. This is Israel of 1980s, 1990s. And when you go to, let's say, psychologist or social worker, they are all trying to make you adapt to the system where you're not supposed to be adapted to the system. The system should learn from the children and see what works with this child. Let's say if you grow a child, as astrologers, we always look at the chart of our children, and we say, where is the moon of the child? What does this child need? So let's say it has, so this child is going to need a lot of activity. This child, let's say it's moon Taurus, this child would need nourishment, safety, slowly to learn how to share, okay, to be patient with them, to have their own autonomy. This child has moon Scorpio. We always must make sure that we tend to it, because they will feel like they have to fight for their emotional needs to be satisfied. Okay, this is how we think as astrologers. What is the moon of my child, and how do I make extra effort to cater? I had a kitten that had a moon in Capricorn. I have moon in Cancer, and it really took time until I noticed that even their mother is pregnant. Okay, so I tried extra to care, to be with that, and to channel even to this kitten that she loved, and so on. So this is how we think. And this is about, upbringing. And so I want you to think back to when Neptune was at this time. And I want you to think at all of your neurological supposed diseases. What they say, it's in your head. I want you to begin to look. When I did my thesis proposal in academia, I was looking at philosophy of medicine, and I was looking at the question of the body-mind and spirit and matter in both holistic medicine and conventional medicine. So one of the articles that I read, the set of articles I read, was about placebo. And apparently you thought that placebo is something that when you don't know it's like a sugar pill, then that it would be effective. But no, it is actually more effective when the patients knew they were getting placebo. And so you ask, what is this placebo? It seems like placebo was a code word for something that's actually way more than that. And people just said, oh, it's placebo. It's that thing you give for the controlled thingy. But when you actually know you have placebo, it has merit. So you could say it's the merit of somebody caring for you, somebody caring about your thoughts, somebody believing that your focus and belief has a power to heal. But it's also about your values. Somebody's valuing you as a patient. Somebody's valuing the role of something like, let's take medicine off for a second. You take this sugar pill, and we have this kind of like a module of me caretaking to understand you and your situation in a way that is not with this Masonic satanic ritual abuse that put toxins in your body and so on. So that was the placebo, was kind of like a spark of light within a very dogmatic system that didn't allow the patient a place to live. In society, we didn't allow the patient a place to live. Now this has to be inclusive of the material things like housing. In Finland, for example, what people call psychosis, then they castrated people, they had the problem with the welfare, like this. It's not like an ideal place for everyone, especially if you're not introvert. But the thing is that when it came to psychiatry or schizophrenia, they understand that the combination of having independent housing, okay, and bridging you to your surroundings so your voice is heard, and believing the patient cures schizophrenia. So supportive environment. And I saw it with actual people that that says, I take the antipsychotics. They wanted antipsychotics, and they were victims of like incest or something like that. But when they went to a conference or something that they liked, was actually had to do with science, then they say, oh my God, I was in this conference and the environment was supportive, and suddenly the voices and the sights and the things, they began to be pleasant. Another thing I was watching is in China, there are youth villages for simply youth, young people that begin to understand, re-emerge. If I think about my generation, integrating rest into work was an Asian principle. So I have no idea how Asians got so American, but the younger generation are basically bringing back the true China and the true Asia because they're bringing back rest to work. So they have these youth villages where they retire for a while. It still costs money, very likely only those who can afford it can do it, but this basically bringing back the traditional Chinese values of putting rest into the workspace or putting rest into your daily schedule. Even as you know, half Dutch, we have the Nixon, not the President Nixon, but for doing nothing. Finns also have that. Israelis don't have that. Slow living is something that Israelis brought from abroad. The good thing that Israelis have is traveling. And then they bring things from other, whether it's worldviews, traditions, and that's the remedy, I guess, for Israelis. But the regime itself is very Masonic. So much so that even I had a woman that dealt with the Me Too, and she did a lawsuit against the university and against the offender and so on, and she exposed the university and whatnot. But when I talked about like the Masonic cult, and she helped someone who has her children kidnapped for ritual abuse, and still she began to act like she doesn't know what I'm talking about, and she said this is dangerous to her because her father, her system of support was still those Masonic orders from the army. Her father was high rank in the army, and he had a picture even with Yitzhak Rabin. And so she literally said to me, I cannot, it's already putting me in danger. I cannot, and I have to block you. And she had to cut contact with me because I mentioned these Masonic orders. And this was a woman who was completely feminist. She did not understand why she cannot work after the Me Too, which was called. And I was like, this is, you understand, you have to put rest into work. But it's very difficult to say that to a Virgo. But they usually learn the very hard way. Even if I take Beyonce, who's like Virgo's sun, then it wasn't until she had a miscarriage that she took a year off. Okay, and you can say a lot of things. I know that now like the cults are being exposed in that, but there's also like the personality of the person. Of course, this damages fertility. So we have a lot of IVF in Israel, which is good to have technology for people who cannot give birth. And even the rules where the women's rights is not women's rights, is the right for the child, but it's not the right for the child. They basically kidnap these children. And so going back to like my childhood, they would frame people like me, and with me it was very difficult for them because I'm genuinely liking life, so I like to study, and I don't think I'm like super intelligent exceptionally as they made of me. I think I'm just like, I'm an intelligent person that just likes to live. And this is why I had to be in a situation where I had suicide ideation, because the society and the surroundings around me was depriving of life. So much so that freedom began to be to die and just not to be in those life-deprecating structures. Even when I think what helped me my mental health, then it's to grow things, to be barefoot on the ground, to create, to have a rest, to be able to rest, okay, to be able to exercise, to be able to do innovative things myself, to be able to work like with the essential oils myself, all these things, and none of what they tried to give as whether medication or frame or system or it's like none of that was helpful. Actually, only thing was with yoga classes that taught me to pay attention to my feet and begin to stand more correctly and correct my posture and correct my toes. But then what came with that is that I'm not compatible with this structure, because it's not about getting the people who have mental breakdown to be compatible with the structure. It's about thinking, where is the structure incompatible with the people? And this includes the Masonic structure, that it's a cult structure, that's a control-based structure, and it's not about sexism. Okay, it's true that they try to deplete yin, very particular. So if you are a man and you show some rest or you show some emotions, you're already considered something that they try to eliminate. They try to make you sadistic. And they do that to boys as well. And the funny thing that the people that told me about this later, they were torturing me. Okay, the names you already know. You have to remember that this is all deriving from tribal society. It's not about finding your tribe. It's about, look what tribal society is. A tribe is a cult. And so for most people, when you hear about this person unalived themselves, this person this person that, it's not because they made wrong choices. It's not because they were looking for a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The problem is only temporary if those societies become inclusive of life.